Jordan's intelligence thwarts plot to undermine national security and arrests 16 individuals. President Sisi and Kuwaiti Emir call for immediate implementation of Gaza ceasefire and humanitarian access. Trump says Zelensky seeks U.S. missiles and Biden should have stopped Ukraine war. Welcome back. Jordan's General Intelligence Service has thwarted plots aimed at undermining national security, sowing chaos and causing physical damage within the kingdom. According to a statement published by the Jordan news agency, the intelligence service arrested 16 individuals involved in these plots, which the department had been closely monitoring since 2021. According to the agency, the plots included manufacturing missiles using local and imported tools for illegal purposes, possessing explosives and firearms, concealing a ready-to-use missile, a project to manufacture drones, and recruiting and training individuals within the kingdom, with the latter undergoing training abroad. The intelligence service announced that it had referred all cases to the State Security Council for legal action. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam expressed his country's full solidarity with Jordan in the face of any schemes targeting its security and stability. During a phone call with his Jordanian counterpart, Jafar Hassan, Salam affirmed Lebanon's full readiness to cooperate with Jordanian authorities in light of reports indicating that some individuals involved in the alleged plots may have received training on Lebanese soil. Salam firmly stressed Lebanon's categorical rejection of being a launching point or a base for any activity that could threaten the security of brotherly or friendly nations. Speaker of the Jordanian House of Representatives, Ahmed Safadi, affirmed that tampering with Jordan's security is a crime and an act of treason that warrants the severest punishment. Safadi added that the parliament denounces and disowns every malicious act or hidden intention that harbors harm against Jordan. He emphasized that the crime uncovered by the Knights of Truth in the General Intelligence Department reveals a pattern of previous behavior marked by double standards and ill intent towards the homeland, its symbols, and its institutions. In a joint statement between Egypt and Kuwait, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Mish'al al-Ahmad al-Jaber al-Sabah, agreed on the urgent need to uphold the three-phase ceasefire agreement in Gaza. The statement emphasized the necessity of halting attacks on civilians and ensuring safe, adequate, and sustained access for humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people in the occupied territories. The Emir of Kuwait expressed his country's full support for Cairo's hosting of the International Ministerial Conference on Early Recovery and Reconstruction in Gaza. Both leaders warned of the severe humanitarian consequences of ongoing Israeli practices, which risk further escalating the conflict across the region. Al Qahira News has reported that Egypt and Qatar have received an Israeli proposal for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, paving the way for negotiations towards a permanent ceasefire. The sources added that Egypt and Qatar have delivered the Israeli proposal to Hamas and are awaiting a response as soon as possible. In a statement, Hamas announced that its leadership is reviewing the proposal received from the mediators and will provide a response soon after completing the necessary consultations. The movement reiterated its firm stance that any forthcoming agreement must include a permanent ceasefire and a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip. The statement also stressed that any deal must include a detainee exchange, the launch of a serious reconstruction process for what the occupation has destroyed, and the lifting of the blockade on Gaza. Hamas has criticized the ongoing blockade on aid into Gaza, saying that Israel has been preventing the entry of all essential items necessary for life, including food supplies, medicine, and fuel, for 7 weeks in a row. The group said in a statement that the Israeli siege comes in addition to the army targeting water wells and desalination plants and obstructing relief operations and food distribution centers. Hamas urged the UN and the international community to take action to stop the policy of mass starvation, ensure the access of humanitarian aid, food, and medical supplies to civilians in the Gaza Strip, and to reconsider the system of international laws and conventions that are violated daily by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The group renewed its call to Arab and Muslim countries to help end the unjust blockade of Gaza. Palestine has welcomed the European Union's announcement of a new €1.6 billion financial support package over 3 years. The package aims at supporting the government's efforts at development programs, strengthening the Palestinian economy, and promoting sustainable development, particularly amid the ongoing Israeli aggression across all Palestinian territories. This support reflects the European Union's principled commitment to the Palestinian cause and the two-state solution, and will help strengthen the resilience of Palestinian institutions to continue delivering services.
The European Union will invest in essential infrastructure, deliver humanitarian aid, and support refugees.
Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto has voiced his anger over Israeli strikes on Gaza. Crosetto criticized recent Israeli actions in Gaza, including a strike on a hospital on Sunday, April 13th, and other attacks that killed civilians. Crosetto said for him, a Palestinian child is worth as much as a Ukrainian child or an Italian child. He added a Palestinian hospital is worth as much as a Ukrainian hospital or Italian hospital, adding that Israel needed to acknowledge its mistakes. The Maldives has announced that it was banning the entry of Israelis in resolute solidarity with the Palestinian people. President Mohamed Muizzu ratified the legislation shortly after it was approved by Parliament. The President's office said that the ratification reflects the government's firm stance in response to the continuing atrocities and ongoing acts of genocide committed by Israel against the Palestinian people. The Maldives had lifted a previous ban on Israeli tourists in the early 1990s and briefly moved to restore relations back in 2010. Hundreds of Israeli colonists have stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque under heavy protection from the Israeli occupation police. Approximately 700 colonists stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque in groups from Al-Mughrabi Gate, performing Talmudic rituals and conducting provocative tours of its courtyards on the third day of the Jewish Passover holiday. The Israeli occupation police imposed strict restrictions on the entry of worshippers entering the mosque, checking their IDs and detaining some of its outer gates. The Israeli occupation forces have continued the escalating aggression against the city of Tulkarm and its camp for the 79th consecutive day and for the 66th day against the Nur Shams camp. This morning, Israeli occupation forces detained 3 young men following multiple arrests last night in Damba suburb and Nur Shams camp. The detainees were assaulted, later released and taken to the hospital. Large military reinforcements entered Tulkarm, blocking streets, searching residents and restricting movement. Forces targeted Tulkarm and Nur Shams camps, Danaba and Harat al-Salam with heavy gunfire and flash bombs. The Israeli occupation escalated forced displacement, threatening residents to vacate their homes, which were then turned into military outposts. At least 14 Palestinians have been arrested by Israeli occupation forces in the occupied West Bank. According to the Palestinian Prisoners Media Office, the majority of the arrests came in the Jerusalem Governorate, where 3 people were arrested in the Al Isawiya neighborhood of occupied East Jerusalem and 3 in the town of Anata. In the Governorate of Ramallah, 3 Palestinians were arrested in the town of Al Mazra'a Al-Sharqiyya and 1 in the village of Kober. In the city of Tulkarm, 1 man was arrested in the neighborhood of Izbit al-Jarad and another in Izbit al-Tayya. 2 more Palestinians were arrested in the Governorate of Nablus, including 1 in the town of Beit Furik and another in the city of Nablus. For more analysis, we now move to Hani in our newsroom. To you, Hani.
Thank you, Hela. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now joined from Ramallah by the writer, researcher, Ahmed Zakarne. Welcome to Qnews, Mr. Zakarne. Now, are we close to actually reaching a ceasefire agreement in Gaza?
Good evening to you and to your esteemed audience. It seems that we are approaching such a deal. But the question is, what sort of agreement? This is the big question. Israel still insists upon the Egyptian and Qatari proposal provided the disarmament of Hamas in reaching a truce of 45 days. And talking about the comprehensive outlook of the agreement, and the truce also stipulated the return of the prisoners and detainees. But the Israeli side did not accept this proposal. Naturally, they do not win to end the war, but the redeployment of the Gaza Strip on the borders following the trisectant portions of the sector. So there are pressures by the Arab mediators, Egypt and Qatar, and also there are intervention by the United States of America, and I think America put a ceiling of such an deal before his visit to the Middle East, that the war has to come to an end, and the return and the release of the detainees.
So what's your take on Israel's ongoing attacks on Gaza while ceasefire negotiations are taking place?
Firstly, the Israeli assault in general since the first day of the war is as they do not targeting any of those armed by the resistance, by targeting the Palestinian people as the victims, or rather 70% of the victims are from women, children and civilians. So in addition to the targets by the Israeli forces, the shelters and the hospitals, meaning targeting all features of life in the Gaza Strip, so all targeted either now or since the October 7th, 2023, they are upon the shoulders of Israel, as all organizations, the United Nations, international community is doing so. So the idea of the negotiation are undergoing in light of bombardment and destruction. This is the idea of the Israeli perception, negotiation under the fire. So whatever is coming by force comes by the more force. It is a doctrine that Netanyahu is taking. And as vast portions of the Israeli public and even the reserve pilots, Navy, Marines, or doctors or scholars in the academia, that Netanyahu is launching a personal war for personal political objectives related to Netanyahu and its government and his government. So that reached to the extent by criticizing the government publicly and the demands of the cessation of the war, even by the reserve officers who participated in the first phase of such a massacre.
Mr. Zakarne, do you think that the administration of US President Donald Trump will pressure Israel to accept the ceasefire agreement this time around?
I think the U.S. administration is in dire need of a ceasefire. Trump is a man of businesses and deals, want to dominate a region, and he has some negotiation chips and wish to make big deals with the allied countries in the region. He had priorities in the region, which is cooling down the region. So that's why he opened a course of negotiation with the Iranian player, and I think is pressuring, Netanyahu's government in two main contexts. The first one on the diplomatic level, and I think the U.S. administration is supporting him. So, along with the current protests by the Israeli people against the Israeli government, as they think that they work against the Israeli interests, along with the United States interest in the East and in other areas.
From Ramallah, that was the writer and researcher, Mr. Ahmed Zakarne. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. Ladies and gentlemen, now we go back to Hela in our studio. Hela.
Thank you so much, Hani. And resuming our news bulletin, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said that he is neither overly optimistic nor pessimistic regarding nuclear talks with the United States. U.S. and Iranian delegations describe the talks in Oman as positive and have agreed to convene once more on April the 19th, with Tehran saying that the meeting will take place again in Muscat. Tehran has approached the talks warily, doubling or rather doubting the likelihood of an agreement and suspicious of U.S. President Donald Trump, who abandoned a previous agreement between Iran and world powers during his first term in 2018. Trump has lately threatened to bomb Iran if there is no deal. And we now move to the latest developments in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is always seeking to buy U.S. missiles. Trump said that the war started and there was no way that it would have been allowed to happen. He stated that Biden should have stopped it and mentioned that Putin, saying that while he wouldn't call anyone an angel during his 4 years in office, it wasn't even a question. And Trump stated that he would never have allowed it to happen.
It's inversely proportional.
The Kremlin has said that there is not yet a clear outline of a potential U.S.-Russia deal on Ukraine, but that the political will to move in the direction of an agreement is there. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the contacts with the U.S. had been positive and useful, but that Moscow would not give a possible timeline for a peace settlement. Russia says that the issue is a complex one and that it is therefore not surprising that it will take time to find a long-lasting solution. Kiev forces hit Russia's Kursk region that borders Ukraine with dozens of drones, killing an elderly woman, injuring 9 people and sparking fires in several buildings in the region's administrative center. The Russian Defense Ministry said that 109 drones were downed over the Kursk region overnight. The region's administration also said that drones also hit an ambulance garage, damaging 11 cars. China has said that it will trade with more friends and become a stronger magnet for investment. The Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian said, facing external uncertainties, China will stay committed to joining hands rather than throwing punches. China's remarks come as Sino-U.S. trade tensions have intensified after Trump announced reciprocal tariffs on April the 2nd, leading to tit-for-tat duties on each other's goods. By April 11, China was under a U.S. trade embargo as tariffs rose to 145%. French Prime Minister François Bayrou has said that the storm caused by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs has shattered trust around the world. Bayrou warned that France faced a moment of truth in terms of fixing its public finances. He added that, in his view, Trump had created a tsunami of destabilization. He also said that it was paramount that France sticks to its public deficit reduction target and for it to reach 3% of gross domestic product as planned in 2029. South Korea's Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok has said that Seoul will try to delay reciprocal tariffs as much as possible in negotiations with the U.S. Choi told Parliament that it's within Seoul's best interests to negotiate as much as possible with the U.S. and help cut the uncertainty the country's businesses face in the global market. Choi said that South Korea will draw up an extra budget of 12 trillion won, that is $8.45 billion, up from the previous proposal of 10 trillion won. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin, and here is what we have been covering. Jordan's intelligence thwarts plot to undermine national security and arrests 16 individuals. President Sisi and Kuwaiti Emir call for immediate implementation of Gaza ceasefire and humanitarian access. Trump says Zelensky seeks U.S. missiles and Biden should have stopped Ukraine war. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.